Greetings, everybody. This is Jordan Parnature with Arrows Forward, coming to you with another episode. Today, we're going to be looking at the life of Moses and how he tried to use excuses. And the passages we're going to be pulling from and what we're going to look at are from Exodus 3 and 4. And we're going to look at several excuses Moses tries to bring up as to why God can't use him. And why it's important that we look at these excuses is because they're the very excuses that we tell ourselves, or that we even try to throw at God to say this is why God can't use us. And so chapters 3 and 4, they pick up. Moses has been hiding out in the wilderness with his father-in-law, tending his father-in-law's flock. He's hiding out because he was in Egypt previously. And while he was in Egypt, he came to find out who he was, that he was a Hebrew, the very people who the Egyptians have enslaved. And so he's witnessing the treatment of his people, how they're being beaten, how they're being oppressed. And it all culminates to Moses trying to take a stand. And he tries to help his people in this way. He's witnessing one of the slaves, one of his people, being beaten, whipped. And so he goes to try to handle the situation. And he goes to the Egyptian officer who's causing this beating and incidentally ends up killing him. And after he kills him, he goes on the run. He's now a murderer and he's a fugitive. And so he leaves Egypt, and he was in this place he was in a royal place. He belonged to a royal family. But yet that wasn't enough, and he took off and he ran to the wilderness. And so you flash forward a few years, and he's tending flock. And so this is where he is, a murderer and a fugitive, hiding out, tending sheep. Now, one of these days, he is tending his flock, and he notices that one's missing. And so he goes to look for this one that's missing. And he goes to the mountains. And as he's in the mountains, he comes across this bush that's burning. But it's not like any burning bush he has ever seen. It's a supernatural sight that astonishes him. And he's looking at it, and a voice starts speaking to him. And it says, "Moses, Moses." And the voice tells Moses to remove the sandals from his feet, for the place that his feet are on is holy ground. And as the stones and the sticks and everything starts getting blown away, it becomes smooth, soft. And so Moses is there on hallowed ground now with this bush. And I don't know if any of you have seen the old animated Prince of Egypt movie from Paramount Pictures, but if you've ever seen it, you've seen that scene when that bush comes alive and it's on fire, and Moses is just in awe of what's going on. But God starts speaking from this bush and tells Moses that he has heard the cry of his people. He has heard them. It has now come time for him to free those people, to release them from their captivity, to free them from their chains, to answer those prayers that have been going up. And so Moses, hearing this, of course he's, accepting of that. It sounds good. It's probably something he's been dreaming for also, for his people to no longer be slaves, but to be freed of their oppression and the pain that they're suffering and going through. And so, yeah, he would be all for it. But then at the end of God's speech about freeing his people, he says, "And unto Pharaoh I will send you." I will send you. Wow. We hear news like that, and we hear about good things that are happening out in the world. We hear about the missionaries that are in the field, mission trips that have reached thousands. We've crusades that have reached thousands. And it's all well and good when we hear those stories about those people that are doing this, when we hear about martyrs that are serving and living for God despite of the danger that they're facing. And it's all well and good because that's, them out there. That's other people that are doing those missions. That's other people that are out there being martyrs. But when it comes to us, and God calling us to go out there and risk ourselves, to get out of our comfort zone, our little safety bubble, then it starts getting a little bit more real. Then we start backtracking a little bit. Hold up, wait, you're going to send me? You want me to do what? You want me to tell whom what? It gets a little bit more real, and we start reeling in, and we start folding a little bit. We start getting weak in the knees a little bit. It's all well and good when we hear about others accomplishing these things for God. But now when our number's called, I don't know about that. And so these excuses that Moses is going to give to God are some of the excuses that we give God ourselves. The first one he comes up with, he says, who am I? Who am I to lead these people? I'm not anybody to these people. They don't know me. They don't know who I am. For all they know, I was a former member of the royal family there in Egypt. I belonged to the family that oppressed them and that was administrative over their pain, over their sorrow. Who am I that they would even want to follow me? Right? He's looking at all the things that are going to go wrong. He's looking at he's making himself try to appear as insignificant as he can so that God will surely say, you know what, you're right. I made a mistake. But no. God never makes a mistake. You understand that? God doesn't make mistakes. He calls Moses because he has a mission and a purpose for Moses. Moses says, who am I that I should lead these people? And he says, in the next excuse he comes up with, he says, what do I even say? Who do I say has called me? Or who do I tell them has sent me? And God says, you tell them that I am has sent you. The fathers of your forefathers, Jacob, of Isaac, of Abraham, the God that they serve, the great I am has sent you. We always, that topic of what do I say, that comes across. I've sat with, multiple groups in the past, youth groups, young adult groups, even adults. And when we talk about the topic of witnessing and sharing our testimonies comes up, it's always, interesting to hear everybody's responses. That I don't know what to say. I wouldn't even know where to begin. I wouldn't know how to hold a conversation. It gets awkward trying to share something like that. You hear all these things, and again, those excuses that we have are always focused on ourselves, right? They're always focused on our own limitations and what we can do in our own strength. And we see that when the situation or the circumstance that we're getting called to is going to exceed our limits, then it becomes overwhelming and we get scared. And so we don't know what to say to those people. What if I get a chance? What if I get this opportunity to share the gospel? I don't even know where to begin. I don't even know what to say. What do I tell them? And we think about things like that. And it keeps us back, and it helps us run, or it keeps us hidden or wanting to hide from those situations. And so we don't even try because we don't even know what to say should the situation arise. Should we get there? What do we do? What do we say? We don't know. Because again, we're just focusing on ourselves, but we miss out on what the whole purpose of our Christian walk is. It's not about us. It's about God and what God has done for us. It's about a merciful Savior who saved us, who forgave us of our sins, who freed us. We were lost, but then we became found. We were dead in our trespasses, but now we have been made alive through Christ. And that's really all there is to say. You just tell somebody how God saved you. Just tell him how he saved you. Simple as that. He tells Moses exactly what Moses is going to say. He brings this question to God. What do I even say to these people? And God tells him what he needs to say. This is what you're going to say to them. This is what you're going to say to Pharaoh. This is how you're going to free my people. By these words are you going to free my people. By these actions are you going to free my people. And so he gets through with that, and he brings up this next one. He says, what if they don't believe? What if they don't believe? And how many of you have had that excuse thrown out there? So what if I share my testimony? What if they don't believe me? What if I get out there and I knock on doors and the doors get thrown in my face or slammed shut in my face? What if I tell them and they don't believe? What if I tell them and they start bringing up debates? What if I tell them and they start bringing up valid questions that I don't have the answers to? What if they don't want to hear what I have to say? Right? We have all these things that pop up that we ask. And we say, this is why you can't use us, God, because who am I? What do I even say? What if they don't believe me if I figure out something to say? What if they don't believe? What if I go to my neighbor and share the gospel and they don't believe? What if I go to my friends and I tell them and they don't want to believe me? Right? And Moses would be, again, we go back to Moses' backstory and he's in his thought process and why he's bringing this up, because again, he was a fugitive, a murderer. Who is he to speak to anybody, right? In his mind, that's what he's thinking. Who am I to speak to these people? They're not going to believe me. Look at my own actions and what I did wrong. I belong to the family that oppressed them. Why would they have any reason to trust anything that I say? Surely they wouldn't believe me. But again, he's focusing on all the things about himself and not about God. He is speaking to a literal burning bush. God manifesting himself in this moment to Moses, speaking to him. Moses is having a conversation one-on-one with the Almighty God, the great I am. And yet he is still bringing up excuses, right? And so Moses, man, he's one of my favorite characters to study, favorite people in the Bible, because of these excuses that have popped up. And it's the very same excuses that I've asked the Lord myself, or brought up to why God can't use me. But God doesn't care about our backgrounds or how much money or our social status or our societal status, for that matter, or class, or who we belong to, or who our people are. God doesn't worry about that. That's not important to God. What matters is a heart that's willing to serve God and that's available to serve God. That's what God cares about. And you may be sitting there thinking and listening, you might be hearing about these excuses, and they may be excuses that you've had as well as to why God can't use you. And they may be running. You may be in hiding right now, trying to hide from the calling that God has given to you. But I want to encourage you, this episode, I want you to know that, again, when we focus on ourselves, the situation's always going to be more overwhelming than it really is. When we focus on our own strengths and our own limitations, it'll always be more overwhelming. But when we start focusing on God and keeping our eyes on God, then that changes the game. Because then we stop looking at ourselves and we're looking to Him. And if we're looking to Him, then you can see how great our God is. And so Moses says, what if they don't believe? And he brings that question, and then God gives him the answer, and he shows him through the Spirit, and he empowers Moses with the ability to do signs and miracles. And he says, with these signs and these miracles, they're going to believe you. They're going to see the works of my hands through you. They're going to see it at work. And God will do that. He doesn't call us, to a mission or a purpose or a ministry and just leave us there on the ledge to handle it on our own. But when He calls us, He equips us as well. He doesn't just leave us hanging, but He makes sure that we have what we need to accomplish the mission at hand. He is a mighty God. He is a graceful God. He is a merciful God. And He is a wonderful God that equips and loves His people. He doesn't leave us as orphans when He calls us, but He's with us every step of the way. And He tells Moses, surely I will be with you when you go to Pharaoh. And you're going to see my wonders. My wonders you're going to see. And so if that wasn't enough excuses for God, he throws out this next one. He says, I don't have the skills. I've never been eloquent of speech. I've never been a good talker. I don't speak well. And how many of you out there have had that excuse? I can't speak very well. I don't have a high vocabulary. I can't carry a conversation. I'm not a good, debater. I can't handle you know, how would I even carry this conversation? Should I answer this? Should I give in and say, yes, I'll follow you, God, and I get into this opportunity, or I go on this mission? I don't have the skills. I can't accomplish it. I'm limited. But here's the thing, you know, as we said earlier, God doesn't make mistakes. He wasn't making a mistake when he called you. He wasn't making a mistake when he beckoned you to come. He knew exactly who you are. He knows exactly who you are. He was the one who formed us, who knit us together in our mother's womb. He knows our strengths. He knows our weaknesses. He knows our limitations. But more importantly, he knows exactly what we can do. Exactly what we can do when he empowers and works through us. You know, that's something we seldom think about. Again, we think about self, we think about limitations, we think about weaknesses. We forget that it's God that's going to do the work. It's the work of the Spirit that's going to accomplish these things, these missions, these ministries we have. None of it's about us, but it's about Almighty God. It's about the living God. And he's going to accomplish his purposes, his missions, his plans through his power. We're merely just the vessels and the tools that he's going to use to accomplish these things. Moses said, I'm not eloquent in speech. I can't speak. I'm never been a good speaker. I get tongue-tied. I stutter. Moses had all these excuses that even if all these other excuses didn't work, surely this one would work because, Lord, you formed me. You know who I am. You know that I can't speak, that I can't talk good. You know that my dialogue, my vocabulary's lacking, that I can't hold a conversation. I'm socially awkward, all this and that. You know what God says? Who formed man's mouth? Who made man's tongue? Who made the blind, the deaf, and the mute? Was it not I? Now go. Powerful response, right? You see, again, God makes no mistakes. He knows exactly who we are because he formed us. He made us as we are. He is the one who has the power. And he'll accomplish things. We just got to get out of his way. Now, again, when you think about the things that he's called us to do, and they may seem great, overwhelming, huge mountains, you know, the challenge, the trials, you know, too great for us to accomplish or even to persevere or get over. But we're looking at those things rather than looking at God. When we look at God, those things, they get smaller. They pale in comparison to the power of our God. And so God tells him this, and then he even says, you know what? Your brother Aaron is on his way here, and he is going to be your mouthpiece. He will speak for you on your behalf. And so God already had a plan in motion. Even though he knew what Moses' excuses were going to be, he had a rebuttal for him and a reply for each and every one of them. And God has a reply and a rebuttal for your excuses. Your excuses pale in comparison to the answers that God has. When they stand up next to the living God, they can't hold water. Our excuses, we bring them to God, and he's the one who can turn any situation around, and they can't hold water. Simple as that. Excuses. Everybody has them, and they all stink. And if all these replies and these rebuttals from God weren't enough, Moses simply at the end, he just says, please send whomever you will. Please send somebody else. And sometimes, you know, we just don't want to do it. It's going to cost too much. It's going to be too risky. It's going to be dangerous. If I answer this call, things are going to change and won't be the same. We won't be able to go back to what we were. But that's kind of the point. You know, God doesn't call us because he wants us to stay the same. He calls us because he wants us to grow into a deeper relationship with him. He wants to refine our faith. He wants our roots to get even deeper. He doesn't want us just to have superficial faith or a superficial walk. He wants us to learn to trust Him and obey Him and to have faith in Him. And the only time you can refine your faith or test your faith is when you walk in it. Not by sight. Not when you have all the answers and it's convenient. But it's when you're out there in the wilderness taking those first steps, following the shepherd when He's leading you. Even though we go through the valley of the shadow of death, we fear no evil, for Thou art with me. Thy rod and Thy staff, they comfort me. True faith grows when we don't have the answers, but rather when we look to God. True faith grows when, in spite of what may be going on, the dangers around, or how uncertain we may be, we trust in the living God to get us through and to persevere. And we look at Moses and who he was and how God's going to use him. Moses was a murderer and a fugitive running from Egypt. And here he is out of the wilderness, and God calls him to go back to Egypt, the very place he was running from, to save the people, to free the captives. Moses going back to Pharaoh, Moses going back to Egypt, Moses going back to the place where he failed in his own strength. Where he failed in his own strength previously, he's now going to succeed through the Spirit and the work and the power of God. Moses is going to go down to Egypt, and he's going to accomplish God's signs and wonders. He's going to send the plagues on Egypt, and Egypt is going to send the people packing. He's going to make Pharaoh let the people go. The people are going to go, and when Pharaoh gives pursuit after them and chases after them, God is going to save them yet again by parting the Red Sea, and the people are going to cross. And Moses is going to lead them across the waters, across the dry ground, going through the waters, onto the safe shore on the other side. And then Moses is going to lead them in singing praises to God. It's an incredible story in the story of Moses. But it all began with Moses giving excuses. But those excuses didn't disqualify Moses. Those excuses, as it turns out, were just small blips in his overall walk. I don't know what excuse you may be holding on to. I don't know what thing you're trying to bring to God's attention and say, this is why you can't use me. This is why I can't be of service to you. I just want you to know that this is a small blip. Trust in God and trust that He has the best plan for you. Trust that He wants that relationship with you. He wants your faith to grow. He doesn't want to leave you as you are. He doesn't want you to have a superficial faith, but He wants you to have a deep faith. One that you've learned to trust in God. One that you've learned to know that He loves you. So excuses, at the end of the day, they don't hold up. And when we give them and try to say, this is why, God, you can't use me, like God has made an excuse, like He's called the wrong phone number. No, God didn't make an excuse, my friend. He called each one of us, and He has called you. Personally, individually, uniquely specified for you. Not anybody else. For you. Now the question is, are you going to answer that call or not? Thanks for tuning in. We look to start having a weekly podcast episode published and uploaded. We're going to look at Sunday evenings. So stay tuned and follow along. Thanks for listening in.